Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Happy Sunday and Happy Father's Day.
Yes, thank
Yeah,
you.
I think everybody celebrating the Father, and we respect our Father, and we can, especially the Heavenly Parents and Heavenly Father, we can full heart offer our beautiful heart to heaven. Let us sing a song, holy song, 122, Love. 122, Love. Love, 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 love.
Love is a power to draw together. Love your neighbor as your brother. Love, 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 love. Joy, 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 joy. Joy is the purpose of our life. Let us dance before our Father. Joy, 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 joy. Peace, 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 peace. Peace is the hope of all mankind. Let us work to free our brothers. Let us work to free our brothers. Love, 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 love. Love is a power to draw together. Love your neighbor as your brother. Love, 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 as your brother. Joy, 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 joy. Joy is the purpose of our lives. Let us dance before our Father. Joy, 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 joy. Peace, 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 peace. Peace is the home of all mankind. Let us work to free our brothers. Let us with peace free our brothers. Peace, 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 peace. Peace, peace, peace,
Thank you. Next song is 174, Sweet, Sweet Spirit. 174, Sweet, Sweet Spirit.
There's a sweet, sweet spirit in this place, and I know that it's the Spirit of the Lord. shall leave this place. Without a doubt, Holy Spirit, sing heavenly dawn. Stay right here with us, fill us with your love. And for these blessings, we're gonna lift our hearts in praise. Without a doubt, we'll know that we have been revived when we shall leave this place. Without a doubt, we'll know that we have been revived when we shall leave this place. Without a doubt, we'll know that we have been revived when we shall leave this place.
Thank you. Next song is page 36, Day of Glory. 36, Day of Glory.
Silent darkness comes, His constant clearest voice, His words of truth and life, wake us up from sleep. Glory, oh glory, oh glorious Lord. Welcome, oh welcome, oh welcome in now, giving all you have and join with our Lord, one with our God, sharing love and beauty evermore. For now the day all men desire, their celebration is at home. Sunrise and morning comes, we rise up in His light, spread forth the word of truth, giving all your strength. Glory, oh glorious Lord. Welcome, oh welcome in now, giving all you have and join with our Lord, one with our God, sharing love and beauty evermore. For now the day all men desire, their celebration is at hand. All holy children come, new days have dawned at last. March forward one and all, quickly now unite. Glory, oh glorious Lord. Welcome, oh welcome in now, giving all you have and join with our Lord, one with our God, sharing love and beauty evermore. For now the day all men desire, their celebration is at hand. Glory, oh glorious Lord. Welcome, oh welcome here now, giving all you have and join with our Lord, one with our God, sharing love and beauty evermore. For now the day all men desire, day of celebration is at hand.
Thank you. Please just stand up, greet the Heavenly Parents. Today is June 18, 2017. Let us bow to Heavenly Parents, God and true parents. 경배. Hello. Join me prayer. 살아게 하시는 하나님 아버지, 참부모님, 안녕하십니까? Most precious, lovable God and true parents, good morning. We are grateful to receive a new day and new week. Every parents, your love is so beautiful and harmonized in our heart and all of creation. You desire to make beautiful world, everything you created good. But we see the world is changing, and now the explosion of good and evil, every parent in the world is very concerning. The terrorism and also the weapon we have, the and so many things tragic what happened in this world. We pray that because of human condition made so many difficult issues to solve the problem. Simply, we have to look at ourselves, inside of ourselves and outside ourselves. The connecting, everything connecting. We seek your kingdom and your truth and your righteousness. Through that we can understand, still in our world, there are so many hatred and anger, and the misusing the things. People try to gain the power and money and to make destruction, to make war. And we really sorry. We simply want to love and truth can guide us, our original heart and mind, to become make beautiful world. Yet we have seen that the selfish ourself and the selfish mind can be leading us to the destruction and war. We really sorry, Heavenly Parents. But we know that everything, the good and the evil, we can divide through the dividing the good and evil, and explode at our heart. What is important in our heart is love and truth. We really want to seek your truth in through your scripture and also the spirit. We really opening up our heart to this time. We can make a unity with your beautiful heart and love and truth, so that we can strive in the goodness around us, Heavenly Parents. We really want to create the beautiful your kingdom, through that we can make a hope to the world, can change even midst of difficult time. Please guide today to learn and practice and make start changing to be good and loving and serve others. Please guide us through our pastor, can give inspiration, your love and spirit, and guide us for this week. We are grateful this time. Please bless this time. In the name of, I report in the name of Raman and Tamiko Montanaro, Central Blessed Family. Amen. Thank you. Welcome, Pastor Montanaro.
Thank you. Thank you, Father. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
So today I want to talk about student life and young people and what direction we take in our lives. Most of you at home have finished. Today is June 18th. So most schools have let out or will be letting out anytime soon. Graduation ceremonies have been happening all around the state and around probably the country for high school and middle school promotions and things like that. So, they always give you speeches, right, about like what you're going to do in your life and everything like that. Most young people are concerned about money. They want to go to college to make money. Most of the majors that people are taking these days are about making money. Business is one of the number one degrees now, economics and business. People want to get a Master's of Business Administration, MBA, so they can go into a business and make money. People are concerned about making money. And that's a natural concern because, your parents want you to be successful. They want you to be comfortable. They want you to be well off. They don't want you to be wanting for anything. And they know that money will protect you from a lot of the dangers and things that we face in life. So most good parents want their kids to be successful, accomplished, be able to do something with their lives that helps people, right? That makes a good income. So they're mostly worried about money, actually, right? Are you guys worried about money? A little bit, yeah. Akiko has to go to college soon, in a year. Taman's already just finished his first year at college. So, a lot of you out there are students listening. And so you're thinking about your future, right? When I was your age, when I was 18, 19 years old, I was the same. But actually, in the 70s, I think people were more idealistic. A lot of young people were traveling around the country, hitchhiking, and with backpacks and guitars. Who's seen Forrest Gump? Anyone seen Forrest Gump? Yeah. Do you remember the scene where Forrest goes running and he runs back and forth across the country like 3 times, and he grows a big beard, and he's searching for something, and people are following him because they're searching for something. Well, the Forrest Gump was actually a film that tried to show key points in American history, starting in the late 50s and 60s and going through the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. It was like a film that tried to show American history in the last 40 years, especially up until the 1990s when the film was made. So it covered this period in American history when young people were looking for something more than just money. And the 60s especially, everybody was worried because the Vietnam War was starting to escalate and young people were being drafted. It's not true now. You don't have to, there's not a mandatory draft. You're not going to be automatically brought into the army. But in the 1960s, young men were forced to conscript. They had to sign up for the draft. And they knew that they might get sent to Vietnam, where the mortality rate was quite high. A lot of people were dying in Vietnam, especially in the late 60s, 66, 67, 68, 69. That's when most of our casualties in Vietnam happened. And during this time, kids were scared. That's what was on their mind. At first they wanted to go to college just because they wanted student deferment. Because if they were students, they didn't have to go to the war. But even that was, changed after a while. And everybody had to go to war. And everyone had to sign up for the draft. So many young people, they ran away to Canada. They changed citizenship, or they escaped into Canada. And they didn't want to come back to the United States. Some young people even injured themselves. Some people would take drugs and alcohol a lot, so they would get really sick. And they would be like out of shape and sick and really like, and hopefully then when they had the physical exam, they would be declared, I think it was called 4F. It meant that you were unfit for military duty. So then you would not be asked to serve in the war. Other people, declared themselves conscientious objectors. It meant, because of my religion, I believe that you cannot kill people and you shouldn't fight. So some people declare themselves conscientious objectors. And some people went to jail, refusing to go to war. So there were all kinds of ways people tried to get out of it. Others believed in America. They believed that America was a good country and that whatever we were doing in Vietnam was a good thing and that we should fight. And they went there willingly, and some of them were injured and some were killed, and some came back with emotional scars. The same thing happened in Afghanistan, right? Many people came back with post-traumatic stress syndrome, right? Disorder, PTSD, where they come back and they're having nightmares. They wake up screaming in the night, shaking and sweating, and they can't relate to anyone. They left America, they were, interested in motorcycles or their car, or, they were interested in football, they were interested in dating, and they had a wife or they had children or something. But when they come back, they've just seen the horrors of war. They've seen their friends getting their arms blown off, or legs blown off, or being shot. In 1 second, you're walking next to a friend and a bullet goes through his head, and he drops, and you're holding his dying body in your hand, or you're killing people, and you're watching them drop in front of your bullets, and the trauma of that is something that many men cannot forget. And they wake up screaming in the night, or they're paranoid, or they're afraid, or they're dealing with incredible spiritual kind of damage. Same thing happened in Vietnam. Many men came back and they were alcoholics. They came back and they started drinking, or they were hooked on heroin or opium derivatives, heroin or methadone or different kinds of drugs, because they were trying to forget what they'd seen and what they'd done. So Vietnam was a turning point for America. It was a war that it was very difficult for us to understand why we were fighting it, what was our goal. And finally, we pulled out without winning the war. Actually, we could say we lost the war because the North Vietnam took over South Vietnam and won the battles. And actually, we could say that was our first war that America lost. And it was very shocking for Americans. And the 70s was a reaction against that. In the 70s in America, that's when I was growing up, that's when I went to high school. I graduated in 77. I'm having my 40th reunion this summer. In the 70s, everyone was trying to forget the war. And it was like going into selfishness. It was like, forget about idealism. In the 60s, everyone was talking about idealism, and that was the civil rights era, and trying to fight against racism and trying to fight against the war and all this kind of idealism. But after the war was over, by 73, 74, everyone kind of wanted to forget that, and they retreated into selfishness. And this is the era of disco, Saturday Night Fever, John Travolta, and everybody kind of dancing, and drugs were common, and also, free sex and free love. The whole idea that, you can do whatever you want with your own body, and you can have sex with whoever you want. And this is the development of the whole free sex culture started in the 70s. And also there was a time of searching going on now. And this is also what I kind of related to, was the idea that we should find ourselves. This was the expression that we talked about in the 70s. Find yourself. Maybe nowadays that doesn't make any sense. Of course, it's part of our culture now, the word find yourself, right? You've all heard the idea, right? Find yourself. So, but isn't that funny? Am I lost? And this, did I get lost? So it's funny to say find yourself. But in the 70s, we talked about finding yourself because we felt lost. We felt like there was a purpose in life and we didn't know what it was. And just like if you don't have a map and you're lost, or in the city, or you're someplace and you don't know where you're going, or you're trying to get somewhere but you don't know how to get there. That's what it means to be lost, right? You don't know where you're going. It doesn't mean that when you find yourself that you yourself maybe feel lost, but it means more that you don't know where you're going. You don't have a direction, a clear direction. And so finding yourself meant finding your direction in life, finding your purpose in life. And this ties in with what I want to talk about today. I want to read to us from Father's words in his autobiography. In the end of the book, he talks about the purpose or your goal in life as a young person. So, Sungnam, would you grab some books and on the top shelf there, right there, all those books, and pass them out? And everyone take a copy. We're going to read today from As a Peace-Loving Global Citizen. I'll put the link on the internet so you can read your own copy along with us if you want. You can stop the video, find the link, and read along with us if you want to. We're actually toward the end of the book, which in a chapter called Find Your Purpose, Change Your Life. Find Your Purpose, Change Your Life. It's on page 322 in my copy. On the online version, the pagination is slightly different because the photographs appear at the end. So I'll give you the page number there as well. Find your purpose, change your life. When we meet someone new, we're always curious about who he or she is. God has the same curiosity about each human being. He is especially curious about young people, and it brings him great joy when he gets to know them intimately. Why is this? It is because our youth is the most important and beautiful period of our lives. This period should be a time of tranquility as one prepares for the future. The process of growing to maturity is a building block that opens the way to a new era. So Father's saying something interesting here. He's talking about God being curious. You think God is curious? God knows everything, right? He knows everything about you. But remember, God created us to be free, to make our own decisions. God doesn't know what we're going to decide. God doesn't know exactly what we're going to choose. Our choices interest God. Your choices interest God. God is interested in you. Otherwise, God would be so bored. Remember, this goes back to predestination. And again, you can study Divine Principle. It's also on my website. But God would be so bored if He predestined the entire universe, including human life, right to the end of time. He would know everything that's going to happen. It would be like watching a rerun on TV. It would be like watching a movie that you already made. You know, I've watched many, many movies. I love films. And I watch the special features sometimes and the commentary. It's very interesting. Many actors never watch the movies they're in. Many actors never will watch the movies they're in. And it's very interesting that many people who make films, they don't watch the film. If you know how it's going to turn out, and you know how it's going to end, you know the story, it's not that interesting. If you wrote the whole thing. Now, I watch films again and again. I like watching good acting and things like that. But at the same time, if God had planned everything and made it so that it had to happen, it's like watching a machine that you made at work. It's interesting, but it's not going to involve your heart, your passion, your love. God is interested in human beings because God doesn't know from day to day, from minute to minute, what you're going to do. And He is interested in your decisions and your own courage and your own ability growing. It is difficult to find young people today who are passionate about their lives. Most of my students have iPhones and iPods and, various forms of technology, devices, right? Which they can use to connect to the internet. And they spend their whole lives looking at the internet. Looking at YouTube videos, looking at, different things online. And it's funny. There's a lot of very funny videos. Or you can watch America's Got Talent. We watched America's Got Talent, and that was also really interesting. You see talented people, very emotional, and now they're really making the backstory so important to get you to cry for that person, and tear-jerkers and things like that, right? And everyone is trying to make their show interesting. And they work really hard to make their show interesting. And so thousands of human beings, man hours are put in these productions. So they're professional. They're really professionally done. And many of them, like, what are those guys, the slow-mo guys, right? They make things happen in slow motion. They have these really high-tech cameras, and 20,000 frames a second they watch, you know, a bullet go through a watermelon or something. It's really interesting, right? It's really interesting. But after maybe an hour of that, you've had enough, right? Maybe for a couple of months, maybe a month later, 2 months later, you'll go back to the slow-mo guys, right? And watch some more videos. But can you imagine watching the slow-mo guys for 7 hours, 8 hours, 9 hours? Would you want to do that? Would anyone want to do that? No matter how interesting something is. How about America's Got Talent? Could you watch all the online things of America's Got Talent? After a while, even the best singer would be boring. Right? No matter how interesting their magic act is or their dance routine. After a while, you'd be like, ugh, you'd turn the computer off. Because no matter how interesting something other people are doing is, you have to do something with your life. Otherwise, what are you doing? You're just a spectator. You're an audience. Your whole life you want to be an audience? Or do you want to live your own life? And this is where we're coming to in the chapter. It's difficult to find young people today who are passionate about their lives. We find so many young people who, with no goal or purpose for their life, are just wandering around. All great leaders in history had a definite sense of purpose in life from the time they were children. From childhood, they nurtured that purpose, held within their hearts, and exerted great energy to achieve it. Whether they were sleeping or playing with their friends, these great leaders geared every youthful action toward preparing for the stage they would stand on in the future. Is that how you are living your life? We are all created to be great men and women. God did not send us into this world without purpose. When God created us, He invested His complete love into each person. So we are all created for greatness. Because God exists, we can accomplish anything. Isn't that a beautiful understanding? God created you. God is great. God invested His purpose in you so you can be great. And you're intended to be great. There is greatness within you. There is greatness within you. Today is Father's Day. Even if the only thing you accomplish in your life is to love one woman so deeply that that woman feels that she is magical, that she's a princess of heaven. You love her so deeply that she understands that her life has value because of you, and you receive her love, and you feel your life has value because of her. And the two of you, your love creates an amazing thing called a parent. And you have children. And even if you can't have your own physical children, you can adopt. And you become a parent and take care of those children and raise those children. You can be great. You can be a great parent. How many people that have won Oscars or won Academy Awards or won gold medals in the Olympics have you seen in their thank you acceptance speeches when they talk about their victory? Who is the first person they always thank? They thank God sometimes if they're religious, and who else they thank? Their parents. So behind every great man, there is an expression, behind every great man there's a woman. But I would also say behind every great person there's parents. And sometimes the parents weren't there. Someone's maybe orphaned or adopted, or maybe their parents were not good parents. But they found someone in their life, right? There's always someone in their life who stepped up and became like a parent to them, right? And they invariably, if you talk to any great person, someone who accomplished great things, they'll talk about someone in their life who made a difference in their life. We were watching America's Got Talent, I think last season, and 2016, maybe, 2017. the young man who's playing piano, what was his name?
2017
Tokyo.
Tokyo Myers.
Tokyo
Tokyo Maya.
Myers.
Tokyo Myers. And he thanked his mentor, his piano teacher, Mr. Morgan, I think it was, who they actually had found him and put him in the audience, their tearjerker moment, that kind of thing. But Mr. Morgan had been his first piano teacher and had pushed him toward greatness. And he thanked him. He's 30-something years old, right? 32. And I hadn't seen him for, 15 years, something like that? He said he hadn't seen him for 15 or 17 years.
2004.
Yeah, it was he had been a young guy. He was a teenager when he last saw Mr. Morgan. But he thanked him because that man set him on his path. So you can be great, even if it's only in helping someone else achieve something externally great. You don't have to become a great pianist or a great athlete in your life to make a difference in someone else's life and watch them achieve greatness. So greatness comes in many forms, but it comes with the heart to seek greatness, the heart to seek God. Let's continue studying. Because God exists, we can accomplish anything. I became a completely different person when I began to love God. This is Father speaking, the second coming of Christ. And he's saying, I became a completely different person when I began to love God. He was 10 at the time. I loved humanity more than myself and was more concerned with the problems of others than with the problems of my family. I loved everything that God created. I deeply loved the trees on the hills and the fish in the waters. My spiritual senses developed so I could discern God's handiwork in all things of creation. So God has created the universe. Father said in other places that if you cannot love nature, you cannot love God. Because God loved the nature to create us. We were created on the foundation of nature. As I was changing my heart to conform to God's love. This is the Messiah speaking now. Think about what he's saying. As I was changing my heart to conform to God's love. So the Messiah was growing, right? He wasn't born like these pictures of Jesus that show him in the Middle Ages. They had pictures of Jesus and he's in the cradle. He's just born. He's the newborn baby, and we all know what newborn babies are like. They're like this, right? But no, newborn Jesus is looking like this. His eyes are open and he's staring at the people and he's like giving them his blessing. Come on. It's nonsense. It's really nonsense. We have to understand that the Messiah is a man, a normal man, but he has incredibly good ancestry, incredibly good environment, incredibly good background, incredibly good parents who, and together with God and the spiritual world, prepare him so that at a very young age, he begins to sense an enormously divine purpose for his life. And he pursues it, and then he accomplishes that divine purpose and becomes a true man. This is what Jesus was. This is what Father was. So God has a divine purpose for each of us. If we find it, especially when we're young, and discover it and pursue it, we can become great. As I was changing my heart to conform to God's love, I also strengthened my body so that I could fulfill my mission. I wanted to be ready to go anywhere, anytime that God called on me. I played soccer and did boxing, some traditional Korean martial arts, and Won Hwa-do, a form of martial arts that I developed. In Won Hwa-do, the athlete moves his body in a smooth, circular motion, almost as in a dance. It is based on the principle that greater power comes from circular motion than moving in a straight line. So Won Hwa-do has this kind of action in it. It's circular. Even the kicks, everything is circular, so that it's designed to not stop the motion of your arm. So punching or kicking like this is designed to come out and come back, like Taekwondo. But Won Hwa-do, Father's martial art, was built on circular motion, striking with the bottom of your fist. It's very powerful, because if you miss, your hand can come right back in again, and you don't lose your momentum or your balance, because everything's circular. And everything is centered on your center of gravity. Father developed this. But he was training himself. Young Jinim is no different right now. Father's youngest son, who Father appointed as the heir and the representative body of true parents on earth, Young Jinim and Yananim, Father's youngest son and his wife, are leading the Providence right now in a new direction. And they're emphasizing martial arts and weapons and being able to defend yourself and your family and making a militia, a peace police and a peace militia, so that we can defend the goodness from any force of evil. Because there are still forces in the world. Look what happened in Washington just a few days ago, right? The Republican Party's softball team, or softball or baseball team, was practicing in a park in Virginia, and someone who was actually a Bernie Sanders supporter, very left-wing, very progressive left-wing, he was living in a van in Washington, D.C., and he was planning this, and he walked up to the field and asked someone who was leaving the field, are these Republican or Democrats? And then the person answered they're Republican, and then he went and started opening fire. And he injured many people, I don't know how many. No one was killed, but the congressman, I think Sinise is his name is, or similar name from Louisiana, was critically injured when a bullet passed through his hip and his body. So he's in the most critical condition. But this kind of insanity is still out there. So Young Jinim is emphasizing both martial arts training, but also weapons training, that you know how to defend yourself. So he's taking this up. So in Wamado, the athlete moves his body in a smooth circular motion, almost as in a dance. It is based on the principle that greater power comes from circular motion than moving in a straight line. Even now, and now Father's writing this in his late 80s, even now I begin each day with stretching exercises for my muscles and joints, and a breathing exercise that I developed. Sometimes when I am traveling around the world on speaking tours, I may not have time for these exercises in the morning. Still, I will find the time, sometimes while sitting on the toilet. I never miss a day of exercise. When I was young, 30 minutes a day was plenty, but now that I'm older, I have increased it to an hour a day. That's really judgment on me. I need to do exercise, and Father lived his whole life, every day, doing physical exercise, training himself so his body was always fit. In 2008, I was involved in a helicopter crash. The helicopter was suddenly surrounded by black rain clouds and in an instant crashed into a mountainside. The helicopter rolled over, and I was left hanging upside down by my seatbelt. Instinctively, I tightly grabbed the armrests on both sides of my seat. If I had not been so diligent in my exercises, I think I would have broken my hip the instant I was suspended upside down. The body is the container to hold a healthy spirit. It is important for us to be diligent about training our bodies. 2008, Father was born 1920, so he was 88 years old when he had this helicopter crash. An 88-year-old man, that's really old. And he was not injured because he was so strong. Few students, now this is for you young people, please listen carefully and read this yourself. Read the whole book, guys. The link is online. If you believe anything I'm saying has value, please find the online link that I have for this and read the whole thing from beginning to end. It's good reading. This is a summertime, right? You young people. So you have time. You know how each school sometimes gives you a reading list over the summer, right? So they give you a reading list. Please read this or this book before the end of the summer. Well, I'm going to add this to your reading list, okay? Read Father's autobiography. It will show you a way of life that you never imagined. A way of life that God is the center and that you're really focusing on bringing God into your life. Few students go to school because they like to study. Do you like studying? Do you like doing homework? Few students go to school because they like to study. They usually go because their parents tell them to, not because they look forward to studying. As students continue to study, however, they gradually learn to enjoy it. From that point, they will start to study on their own and find their own path. An interest in learning is a sign of maturity. Let's read that again. An interest in learning is a sign of maturity. One more time. An interest in learning is a sign of maturity. I will say the same thing for myself. I was a motivated student, but I think my motivation was mostly because I wanted to get A's. I was motivated by success in school. I was a good student, so I was really motivated by the fact that I was often the best student in the class. And I was the best student in my high school, actually, at the end of 4 years of study. So I was very motivated and proud of that achievement. I still am. You know, it's exciting to think that I was the best student in my high school. And I was one of the best students at Cornell when I went to Cornell. But when I dropped out of Cornell, and this is what I was talking about when I talked about my life in the 70s. I dropped out of school in 1978. After a year and a half at Cornell, I dropped out. Because I knew, I had discovered a hunger in me for some answers, and I wasn't going to get those answers in school. I knew I had to find myself. We talked about finding yourself earlier. And I went looking for myself. I traveled for 2 years until I met our movement. I lived in Connecticut for a year and a half, then I traveled to San Francisco, and in San Francisco it's where I finally met our movement. And I began hearing the divine principle, and I was deeply moved, and I knew this was what I had been searching for. I read many books. I was reading the Bible, I was reading Be Here Now by Ram Dass, I was reading Eastern and Western texts of different religions, searching for myself, searching for answers. I was doing co-counseling to do psychological kind of healing and to try to understand how my heart had been hurt by my parents' divorce and by other things in my life. All of us need healing, and all of us need restoration. All of us need growth and transformation. We're not where we're supposed to be. So let's get there. So I spent 2 years searching, and I found our movement, and I've been growing ever since. But through that process of transformation, I went from being a physics major at Cornell, studying nuclear fusion, math and science. I was transformed into somebody who was deeply passionate about religion, of course, about life, about God, but about people too. And I found that I had a gift for language. I lived in Korea, and I was fascinated by the Korean culture and language, and I studied it, and I embedded myself, and I immersed myself. I refused to speak English. And I became the best Korean speaker. Out of 200 Americans that were in the contingent of young people that I was with in Korea, I became the #1 Korean speaker while I was there. And then we came back, and I went to seminary. And after seminary, my wife and I, we had 3 children, and Taman was in my wife's womb, and we were about to give birth. And we were called to go to Italy. And I went to Italy for 4 years working with the Washington Times. And again, I immersed myself, and I enjoyed the parts of Italian culture that I found and that I enjoyed. And I learned Italian. Just last summer, after a year of personal study, I immersed myself in Middlebury's famous language immersion program over the summer for 7 weeks. I spoke nothing but Spanish for 7 weeks. I even gave out sermons in Spanish. You can see the sermons online if you go to my website. En Español is the section where I uploaded the 7 sermons I gave in Spanish from Middlebury College. They're given right on the campus at Middlebury. So I've studied and learned 3 languages now well. And French when I was in college and high school. So, and Oma's Japanese, actually from Japan. She speaks Japanese. Now she's American citizen. So I speak a little bit of Japanese. But I found my passion was studying languages and cultures. I love being exposed to new ideas, new feelings, new ways of being. And languages are the doorway to that. And I found my passion, and I love to learn. I'm 57 years old. I was studying Spanish at 55, 56, 57 years old. I started learning Spanish at 55. So do you stop learning? Let's read Father's words now. Let's read the line again. An interest in learning is a sign of maturity. Parents cannot wait until their children mature enough to study on their own. Because you may be in your 20s before you're mature enough, like I was, before I started really understanding my own passion for learning, right? So is it okay not to study until you're excited about studying? You may not even be able to read, right? If you don't go to school, if you don't study, you won't be ready when that spark hits you and you want to learn something. You have to be able to read and write well. You have to be able to manipulate numbers well. These are just basic skills. And you have to have a curiosity about the world and history. So these are things we should study in school, and language, right? So few students go to school because they like to study. They usually go because their parents tell them to, not because they look forward to studying. As students continue to study, however, they gradually learn to enjoy it. From that point, they will start to study on their own and find their own path. An interest in learning is a sign of maturity. Parents cannot wait until their children mature enough to study on their own. They tell them, "You have to study. Please, make up your mind to study." And they put pressure on them. Parents do this because they know that children need to study in order to prepare for the future. They worry that if their children don't study at the proper age level, they will face the future unprepared. Now, watch this. Father's suddenly going to change direction. There is, however, something more important than studying to prepare for the future. Before unconditionally focusing entirely on studies, young people must realize what they want to do in life. They must make a determination to use their talents to help the world rather than just serve themselves. Many young people today seem to be studying just for study's sake. Unless you have a purpose in life, your studies will lack the passion needed for happiness. Or success, I would add. Once I came across a Korean student working hard on his English schoolwork. I asked him, "Why are you studying so hard to learn English?" He answered, "To get into a university." What could be more short-sighted? Getting into a university is not a purpose. A university is a place to go to study particular subjects in the course of pursuing a larger objective. It cannot be the objective itself. Also, do not define your life goal in terms of how much money you want to make. I have never received a salary, but I manage to eat and stay alive. Money is a means to do something, not the goal. Before you make money, have a plan for spending it. Money gained without a prior objective will soon be wasted. Look at all the people who inherit large sums of money from their parents. I've seen so many friends. I have one friend who's very wealthy. Well, his family was very wealthy. And, you know, his family, his oldest brother and sister did okay. They found something to do. But he never wanted to go in that direction. And his younger brother got completely wasted and got so into drugs too young, very young, and then became an addict, and his life was ruined. I've seen so many people coming from wealthy families that don't find any direction in their life. And the money that they're given by their parents doesn't help them. It just gives them time to just waste, right? They can just hang out, or they can, you know, they don't have a purpose for the money because they haven't found their own purpose in life. Money gained without a prior objective will soon be wasted. Your choice of occupation should not be based only on your talents and interests. That's interesting. You should not choose an occupation based only on what you're good at or what you're interested in. We always think that way, right? Find out what you love and then pursue it, right? That's the common knowledge now. Find out what you love to do and pursue it. But Father's saying something different. He says, your choice of occupation should not be based only on your talents and interests. Whether you become a firefighter, a farmer, or a soccer player is up to you. But what I'm referring to transcends your occupation. What kind of life will you lead as a soccer player? How will you live as a farmer? What is your objective in life? Do you understand? Look at these guys who are interested in sports. We see this all the time, right? People who are interested in sports. They become top-level NFL or NBA players. They become top-level players in some sport. What happens to them? Some of them are able to keep focus and they can have a good family, and we're so proud of those athletes that marry, have children, and are faithful to their wives. Because it's very rare. How many memoirs have we read about athletes who go on basically spending sprees, buying all kinds of gold, sexual sprees where they have sex with so many different women for many years, right? All the fans that are throwing themselves at them. Alcohol and drug sprees where they're so stoned and drunk that they can't even, that they're making mistakes, that some of them almost, they're arrested for DUI, driving under the influence, or they have an accident when they're drunk, all right? How many times have we seen movie stars and athletes who must have been dreaming about that success their whole lives, but what kind of life do they live once they become successful? Politicians, no exception. How many politicians have we seen involved in scandals? Sexual scandals, money scandals, all kinds of scandals. Because once they achieve success, they've accomplished their goal in life. They have no more direction anymore. Their life suddenly loses focus. So Father's asking this question: what kind of life will you lead as a soccer player? How will you live as a farmer? What is your objective in life? Last two paragraphs. To set your objective is to give meaning to the life you will lead. If you're going to be a farmer, then you should set your objective to test new agricultural methods, develop better species of crops, and help eradicate world hunger. If you're going to be a soccer player, then set a meaningful objective, such as to heighten your country's image in the world, or to establish soccer camps that will nurture the dreams of economically deprived children. To become a world-class soccer player takes incredible work. If you do not have a definite purpose in your heart, you will not be able to endure the difficult training required to reach the top. Only if you have an objective will you have the power to maintain your course and live a life that is a cut above those around you. Okay. So, reading Father's words always gives us a clear center, because Father always had a clear center and spoke with a clear center. Do you have a clear center? Do I have a clear center? I always look at my life and I'm very self-critical. I think all of us are, aren't we? We criticize ourselves more than anyone else does. I criticize my weight, my health, my activity, how many hours a day I spend doing something useful. I criticize myself more than other people do. But criticism is not enough. Without a relationship with God, without a relationship with God, we will not be able to find our purpose in life. Who gave us our purpose in life? Who invested himself in us? Who is the ultimate father of Father's Day? Who is your parent? Do you have a relationship with your parent? Are you talking to your parent every day, every minute? Are you connected? Without being connected to God, you cannot find your true purpose in life. Because your purpose in life includes God. We're built to become God's children and God's body, God's external form. God wants to dwell in us. And therefore He built us for that purpose. Without God, you will not find your purpose in life. So spend time every day in prayer. Talk to God. Listen to God's voice within you. Last week we talked about this. Finding the truth within you. It comes from listening to God, hearing God's voice, and then letting that resonate. And then whatever resonates with God, that's true. Find what is true and live with the truth. Thank you so much for listening. Please continue to study Divine Principle, Father's teaching, and you can go back and see all the sermons I've given if they can inspire you. But please be motivated to find your purpose in life. Spend this summer, you students, reading Father's words and developing your own heart and your passion for why you want to study, what you want to do with your life. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, Thank you so much. Happy Father's Day. I pray that you can feel hopeful and excited and joyful when you see our lives, when you're so interested in us. But I pray we can make our lives interesting for you, that we can be passionate about what we're doing every day, that we can be excited about our lives and the potential we have to change the world around us, to better the world around us, to help and influence the people around us in a good way, to become better and stronger and more interesting people themselves. Help us, Father, to become the tribal messiahs that you want us to be, the kings and queens of Chan Il-guk, the kingdom of heaven on earth. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts and our sins, as we forgive those who have debts and sins against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For yours is the kingdom and the power and the glory, now and forever. Amen. Please bless this day, Father. Help us to fulfill your words of promise, your words of hope. 감사합니다. 모든 말씀 축복 중심 가정 라만과 타미고 몬테나로 이름으로 보고드립니다. For this report in the name of Raman and Tamiko Montanaro, a blessed central family. Aju. Thank you, everybody.